Before we start, take a moment to like and subscribe. Being a knight in the Middle Ages was the ultimate dream for many young boys. It wasn't just about having a shiny suit of armor and riding a magnificent war horse. It was a grueling, decades-long commitment filled with hard work, learning, and some serious discipline. The journey to knighthood began surprisingly young, around the age of 7. A boy destined for knighthood, usually the son of a noble or a knight, would be sent away from his own home to the castle of a wealthy lord or a powerful knight. This was a huge deal. The young trainee, called a page, wasn't there just to play. He was essentially a junior servant, learning the ropes of noble life and getting a head start on his future duties. Pages often helped the ladies of the castle. This might sound simple, but it was essential training in manners, courtesy, and chivalry, the soft skills of a knight. They learned how to be polite, carry themselves with grace, and generally be a refined member of the noble class. They acted as messengers, fetchers, and general helpers around the castle. This taught them obedience, speed, and discretion. While not yet swinging heavy swords, their physical training began. They learned to ride horses, practice with wooden swords, and participate in sports that built agility and strength. Imagine a medieval boot camp, but with more running after a grumpy lord. Beyond just helping out, pages were taught the polished skills needed to run a great house. Believe it or not, they did have lessons. They learned basic literacy, reading, and perhaps a bit of writing, often in Latin or French, religion, and music or chess. These were the marks of an educated, well-rounded noble. They learned to play instruments like the lute and to sing. These skills were important for courtly entertainment and for expressing the medieval ideal of courtly love, which was a highly stylized and respectful way of admiring noble ladies. It was mostly poetic, not romantic. This wasn't just a sport. It was a necessary skill for providing food and was a major part of noble socializing. A page learned how to care for, train, and hunt with birds of prey. The page stage was all about learning the strict rules of castle life, developing good character, and beginning the physical preparation that would dominate the next phase. Around the age of 14, if the page had shown promise, discipline, and a good attitude, he was promoted. He officially became a squire, pronounced esquia, and was assigned directly to a specific knight. This was when the training got serious. The squire was basically the knight's personal assistant, valet, and bodyguard, all rolled into one. His life revolved entirely around serving his knight. A squire's day was packed with essential high-stakes duties. Squires were responsible for the knight's entire gear. This meant hours spent polishing the armor to prevent rust, a huge job, using sand and oil to keep the metal gleaming. They also had to ensure all straps, buckles, and chains were solid, sharpening swords and lances, and ensuring the warhorse's tack was in perfect condition. A rusty sword or a loose saddle could mean life or death for the knight. They knew every piece of the harness, hauberk, chainmail, and helm intimately. A full suit of armor was heavy and complex. The squire was the one who helped the knight put on and take off the armor, a task that required knowledge, strength, and speed. Combat training, real deal. This was the fun part. Squires practiced intensely with real, though sometimes blunted, weapons. They often used a pell, which was a tall wooden post, to practice striking and footwork for hours. They trained by riding full speed and hitting a target, the quinton, that would swing around. If they were too slow, it would hit them back. This taught them accurate aiming and quick reflexes. For tilting, they learned to perfectly guide their mighty warhorse, the destrier, while holding a long, heavy lance steady. They trained for hours on the castle grounds, learning the proper use of the sword, lance, mace, and shield. They had to be just as skilled fighting on foot, often necessary if the horse was killed, as they were fighting on horseback. This level of physical exertion meant they had to be in peak condition constantly. When the knight went to war or a tournament, the squire went too. He was there to carry spare weapons, fetch a fresh horse, and if the knight was knocked down, the squire's job was to help him back up or even defend him until he could stand again. They were literally in the thick of the action, often experiencing real combat, though usually not as the main fighter. The squire phase was the longest and most crucial. It tested the young man's endurance, bravery, and loyalty. After 7 hard years, if the squire had proven himself worthy in battle, loyalty, and skill, he was finally ready for the ultimate honor. If the squire survived his apprenticeship and his knight deemed him ready and honorable, the time came for the grand finale, dubbing the ceremony where he was formally made a knight. The future knight would bathe, symbolizing purification from sin. He would spend the night alone in prayer in the castle chapel, keeping a vigil of arms. He would contemplate the serious commitment he was about to make and watch over his armor and weapons. The next morning, usually surrounded by family, nobles, and fellow knights, the ceremony took place. The squire knelt before the lord or king who would be performing the ceremony and swore solemn oaths to uphold chivalry, protect the weak, defend the church, and always be honorable. These oaths were the very core of knighthood. This was the main event. The lord would tap the kneeling squire lightly on the shoulder or neck with a sword, saying words like, "Arise, sir." This tap, called the accolade, instantly transformed the squire into a knight. Sometimes, a full slap was given to ensure the knight remembered the moment forever. He was given his symbols of status, his own sword, spurs, a must-have for a proper horseman, and sometimes his own banner. Naturally, no major medieval event was complete without a massive feast. The newly minted knight was celebrated with food, drink, and music. The new knight was now bound by the code of chivalry. This wasn't just a list of polite rules. It was a deeply ingrained system of ethics that governed a knight's behavior in war and in peace. The code demanded courage, justice, mercy, generosity, faith, nobility, and a readiness to help those in need. This was what truly separated a thuggish warrior from a noble knight. While the code demanded purity, knights were still warriors. The code also set rules for combat, which were often based on practicality and profit. A chivalrous knight tried to capture high-ranking enemy knights rather than kill them. Why? Because a captured nobleman could be ransomed back to his family for a huge amount of money, which was a major source of income for the victor and his lord. The code dictated that once a prisoner was captured, they should be treated with courtesy and honor, reflecting their noble status even though they were enemies. This helped ensure that if the knight himself was captured later, he would receive the same honorable treatment. Once dubbed, the knight became part of an elite class. His training never truly stopped, but his role shifted. He could now participate in highly popular and highly dangerous events like jousting and melee combat to win prize money, gain glory, and keep his skills sharp. Act as a retainer, riding into battle to protect his lord's lands and interests. If he was lucky enough to be granted his own small estate, a fief, he would become a local lord, overseeing the tenants and ensuring justice and order on his land. The training to become a knight was a rigorous 14-year-long school of hard knocks, turning a little boy into a respected, disciplined, and formidable warrior bound by a powerful code of honor. It was perhaps the most challenging and most coveted job in the entire medieval world.